Hello there, I'm Andy the audiobook narrator, and in my last video I gave you free access to the audio version of the complete prologue of Grey Justice, the superb best-selling British action thriller written by the acclaimed Alan McDermott. Yes, free of charge. And now in this video I'm giving you access to the whole of chapter 1, which followed the prologue, again free of charge. But if you haven't yet listened to the prologue, then hot foot out of this video and click on the link to the prologue which is in the notes in this video below, and then come back to this one. Now, as I mentioned before, Grey Justice is book 1 in the celebrated million-plus best-selling Tom Gray series. Written in 2011, the main character is, of course, Tom Gray, a tough and heroic ex-SAS sergeant in the British Army. This book, Alan McDermott's first, and the rest of the 7-book series launched his highly successful writing career. If you like action thrillers, then you really shouldn't miss this. And although written 13 years ago now, its central message is still highly relevant and very topical today, arguably even more so than it was then. In the prologue, the scene was set, a personal tragedy for Tom Gray caused by the reckless behaviour of young criminals. In this chapter, which is just under 15 minutes long, the effect of the tragedy on Tom's life becomes clearer. Will he take action to put these wrongs to right? Chapter 1, 28th of October 2010. The alarm clock heralded the start of a new day, and it came as some relief to Tom Gray, rousing him from yet another nightmare. In the months since Daniel had gone, he had rarely been able to sleep without dreaming of the incident. At first he had thought it a blessing that he hadn't witnessed Daniel's death, so he could remember his son as he was the last time he saw him alive. But as the weeks went on, he found that each dream saw Daniel dying in more bizarre and painful ways. In all these dreams, he was there, watching it unfold, but helpless to do anything about it. The relief soon turned to anguish, though, as he remembered what the day had in store. As much as Daniel's death had torn him apart, Tom had been able to immerse himself in his work. For his wife, there had been no such distraction. She had shunned friends and sat alone in the house day after day, hitting the bottle. He had lost count of the number of times he had arrived home to find her drunk and watching a home movie. Daniel learning to eat with a spoon. Daniel taking his first steps. Daniel saying "Daddy" for the first time. Every evening was spent consoling her, urging her to get back in touch with her friends and family, to carry on with life. But despite her promises that she would, he saw little evidence of things improving. The fact that he hadn't spotted the signs for what they were would haunt Tom Gray for the rest of his life. But today, more than any other. It was time to have a shower, shave, and head to the office to do the payroll. In the afternoon, he would bury his wife. Stopping only at a sandwich bar to grab a bacon roll, Gray drove to the offices of Viking Security Services and filled his parking space near the front door. He had started this company a few months after leaving the army, supplying security personnel to domestic and foreign companies for the last 5 years. His main income came from supplying BGs, or bodyguards, to companies operating in regions affected by the recent upheaval in the Gulf states, although he also provided staff specialising in training private defence teams. His first such contract was supplying advisors to a Saudi prince to upskill his personal guard, and the job they had done had cemented his reputation. Gray currently had a team of 5 permanent advisors, plus over 100 other freelance staff on his books, ready to take a job at a moment's notice. Half were already in the field. Each of them was earning Viking Security Services a commission of £100 a day. All the people he employed were either personally selected, having served with them, or came highly recommended by former colleagues still in the forces. If a soldier cut the mustard in his old regiment, he would be pointed in Gray's direction when he left. His insistence on selecting only the best in their field made him the standout choice for close protection contracts. He got out of his BMW convertible after putting the roof up to protect the interior from the seagulls that mobbed the area. One of the local residents liked to feed these birds each morning, which meant at least 30 of them would be on the wing screaming past his office window and shitting all over his car. He wouldn't have minded if they had been little sparrows or blue tits, but seagulls were nothing more than flying rats. They nested on buildings, they ate garbage, often destroying the garbage bag and spreading its contents all over the street in the process, and they made such a racket whenever a rival ventured to within 50 yards of their territory. Perhaps one day they would abandon the city and return to the sea, but as long as this ignorant cow kept inviting them for breakfast, Tom wasn't going to hold his breath. Inside the office building, Tom stopped at the kitchen to get a coffee to go with his sandwich. He ate after mating the laptop with the docking station on his desk, and once it had powered up, he took a quick look at the BBC News website. He wanted to get to the World News section and check on developments in Syria, where he had a team of 7 contractors. But before he could navigate to the page, the main headline caught his eye. Anger at killer driver's sentence. Gray clicked the link and read the article, which told of a 17-year-old who received a £500 fine and a 12-month driving ban for killing his passenger girlfriend when he crashed his car. He had admitted driving without due care and attention rather than face the more serious charge of causing death by dangerous driving. Gray thought about Stuart Boyle, the man who had killed Daniel. The police wouldn't give Gray any specific details about Boyle due to the trial, which was starting today, but one officer had admitted he had previous. They were confident of a conviction, and the fact that Boyle had been remanded in custody at the start of the year suggested their case was good. They had CCTV evidence of Boyle leaving the driver's side door, which was captured by a resident who had installed the cameras after being plagued by the local youths. Gray would miss the first day of Boyle's trial, which was expected to last all week, but would be in court for the remaining days and the verdict. Another headline caught his eye. M1 close near Luton after crash kills 2. His thoughts immediately turned to his wife. The coroner's verdict was suicide. Dina had been seen to drive into the garden wall at about 15 miles an hour, which deployed the airbag. She'd then taken to the motorway and ploughed into a motorway bridge support at over 110 miles per hour. She hadn't been wearing her seatbelt. Gray didn't dispute the coroner's decision, but every day since her death he had cursed himself for not realising she wasn't as strong as him. He knew he should have seen the signs. His army training had taught him that death inevitably came for everyone, and when you lose someone close, you celebrate their life, not mourn their passing. On that day, that training abandoned him, and he cried like he hadn't cried in his 36 years. The funeral had been held at the same church where their son was laid to rest. The mourners were equally split between Dina's family and Gray's ex-army friends, separated by the coffin suspended over the hole in the ground. To Gray, the service seemed to be over as soon as it had started. He had spent the entire time in his own memories, and heard few of the words spoken by the vicar, not even allowing the late autumn drizzle to penetrate his little world. Eventually, a hand on his shoulder brought him back to the present, and he saw that the coffin had already been lowered into the ground. He stood confused for a moment, not knowing if he should throw some soil on the coffin or say a few words, but thankfully everyone opposite turned to leave, and he took that as a cue to do the same. He moved to catch up with Dina's mother, but his wife's brother stopped and put up his hand. "Now is not the time, Tom." Tom Gray had a feeling there would never be a right time, because Ruth had made it plain that she blamed him for Dina's death. He had phoned many times, but Ruth never took nor returned his calls. Eventually he had driven to the house to confront her, only to be told that she didn't want to see him. "Mum's taken it hard," Dina's brother had told him. "How could you let my sister get into that state? Didn't you notice something was wrong?" Gray had offered him no answers and had left without making his peace. That had been his last contact with Dina's family, and now it seemed there would be no more. Len Smart put an arm around Gray's shoulder. "Come on, let's grab a drink." Smart led Gray to his car, and they drove in silence to the pub. Once inside, with pints in front of them, Gray said, "I should go to the wake, Len." "No, you shouldn't. Give them time. They'll come round, but right now, let them grieve." Gray knew his friend was right. Dina's family needed time to come to terms with their loss, just as he did. It wouldn't help them to have the man they blamed for her death walking among them. Tom's parents had handed him to social services as a toddler, and he had been raised by foster family after foster family until he was old enough to join the army. It was only there that he finally found people with whom he could truly bond. They were his only family now. A dozen of Gray's friends walked into the pub, having followed them from the church. 2 headed to the bar to get a round in, while the rest pulled tables so that they were all sitting together. "Any new business come in?" Carl Levine asked, choosing a topic to take Gray's mind off the day's proceedings. "Yeah, a contract for 3 BGs in Afghanistan and another coming up for 8 in Iraq, looking after oil workers. I'll be meeting with the oil company in a couple of weeks." "Sounds good. When you get it, don't forget your old friend Len." "Don't worry," Gray assured Smart. "When the contract's signed, you'll be second on the list." Len appeared hurt. "Only second? Who's first? Not Sonny, surely." Simon Sonny Baines was so named because he looked like a schoolboy when he'd enlisted and hadn't seemed to age a day since. Along with his youthful appearance, he had a penchant for childish pranks, many of which were at Len's expense. "No, not Sonny. Me." "But what about the business? Who's going to run it when you're traipsing around Baghdad?" Gray took a mouthful of beer. "It's up for sale. One venture capitalist firm has already shown interest. We haven't discussed numbers yet, but my accountant reckons I should be looking for about 1.8 million. "This is a bit sudden. What brought it on?" Jeff Campbell asked. Gray kept them waiting by taking another long drink. He had known these men for many years, and they had been through a lot together. Yet he still felt uncomfortable opening up to them. They had shared many things in their time, but rarely their emotions. "I just can't bear it without them," he finally said, staring into his glass. "If I stay around here, it'll drive me crazy, I know it. When Dina and Danny were alive, I would think about them on the drive home, and every time I opened the door, he would run to me shouting, 'Daddy!' Now when I open the door, there's just silence, and it tears me apart." His eyes began to cloud, and he wiped them before finishing off his beer. As he put his empty glass on the table, it was immediately replaced with a fresh pint. "Whenever I pass his nursery, I think of him," Gray continued. "When I go to the supermarket, I remember the times we used to go as a family, and I even sleep on the couch because I can't stand to be alone in our bed. When I see a woman and kid in the street, it reminds me of them. There are just too many things in my daily routine that make me think about my family. I need a fresh start, get out of the area and throw myself into something that will take up every waking moment. What better than a stint in Iraq?" "But why sell up?" Colin Avery asked. "Couldn't you just get a manager in for a while?" "I could," Gray admitted, "but I want a clean slate. I don't want to come back to the old routine. It'll just bring back the memories. This way, once I'm done in Iraq, I can settle anywhere I like." A few nods told him that they thought his plan made sense. A couple of them asked about positions in the upcoming contract, and he began taking the names, but his mobile interrupted him. The display told him it was his solicitor, so he made his excuses and moved to a quieter area of the room. He listened for a few moments, then suddenly exploded into the phone. "You're fucking joking!" Everyone at the table looked at him, their eyes asking what the problem was. Gray listened for another minute or so before ending the call and resuming his seat at the table. "They released Boyle," he told his friends, and knocked back a whiskey which was sitting in the middle of the table. "Apparently, he offered to plead guilty if they changed the charge to driving without due care and attention. The prosecution accepted the offer, and the judge gave him 15 months and then released him because he had already served more than half of that on remand."
"Why only 15 months?" Paul Bennett asked. "Was it his first offence?"
"Hell no," Gray spat. "My solicitor said he had 43 previous convictions for car theft, plus 34 other convictions including assault, burglary, possessing an offensive weapon, and various drug offences."
"So that's it? He just walks?"
"He just walks," Gray confirmed.
"He's just spent 8 months with his own kind learning new and improved ways of breaking into cars, and now he's free to try them out," Sonny said. "That can't be right."
"This country's too soft on these little shits," Tristram Barker Fink agreed.
"They should bring back national service, give them some real discipline."
"Or the birch." Other suggestions came thick and fast, including chop their thieving hands off and just shoot them in the fucking head.
"Want us to pay him a visit?"
Avery asked, and a few of them nodded their willingness to take part. "Thanks, guys," Gray said, a faraway look in his eye. "But I think it's gone beyond that now." So that was Chapter 1 of Grey Justice, and I hope you enjoyed it. Tom is furious, of course, with the lenient sentence handed out to the person responsible for the tragedy that has changed his life, but what can he do? Well, you can find out, because coming up soon on this YouTube channel is Chapter 2, in full and free of charge. I'm hoping you've enjoyed the first 2 instalments, and if so, I urge you to subscribe to my channel, no cost of course, and remember to click on the little bell symbol so that you get notified whenever I release a new video in this series, as well as others on stuff all related to audiobooks, for audiobook fans, for authors, and for new or aspiring narrators. And please remember to click on that thumbs up button to show that you've enjoyed this video. So thanks for listening and watching. Don't miss Chapter 2, it's coming up soon. Bye for now and see me again.